For 33 years, I was the invisible daughter, the safe bet who didn't require attention because my sister, Brooke, demanded all of it. I had built a quiet life in Chicago Heights, convinced that distance was the only peace I would ever get. Then came the bequest, $15 million hidden in a private trust, and I learned the hard way that my family's sudden affection wasn't about love. It was just a transaction waiting to clear. The silence in my condo was expensive, though not in the way people usually meant. It did not cost me a fortune in rent, nor did it require a mortgage that kept me awake at 3 a.m. It cost me years of careful subtraction. I had subtracted the drama, subtracted the expectations, and eventually, I had subtracted the people who thrived on both. At 33, living in Chicago Heights, I had finally balanced the ledger. My life was small, tidy, and impeccably managed. I worked as a senior analyst in risk compliance for a mid-sized logistics firm. It was the kind of job that made people's eyes glaze over at dinner parties, which suited me perfectly. It meant no one asked follow-up questions. I had a condo with beige walls I'd painted myself, a paid-off Toyota, and a circle of friends who knew me as Ari, the reliable one who always remembered birthdays and never forgot to bring the wine. I was the easy one. That was the label my parents, Martin and Elaine, had affixed to my forehead somewhere around kindergarten. Ariana is so low maintenance. Ariana is so sensible. It was meant to be a compliment, I suppose, but over 3 decades, I had learned that being the easy one really just meant I was the one they did not have to worry about loving too hard. That energy was reserved for Brooke. Brooke was 18 months younger and took up all the oxygen in the room. She was the fire, the spark, the drama. If I got an A on a report card, it was met with a distracted nod, because Brooke had just gotten the lead in the school play or, later, had just gotten her heart broken by a drummer or, later still, had just gotten evicted and needed a soft place to land. I had not seen my parents or Brooke in 6 months. The distance was not a formal estrangement, just a slow drift I had stopped fighting against. Then came the phone call that changed the math of my entire existence. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the call came through. The number was local but unfamiliar. I almost let it go to voicemail, but professional habit made me answer. "This is Ariana Price," I said, my voice practiced and neutral. "Miss Price, this is Arthur Sterling. I am the estate attorney for the late Dr. Helen Rourke." The name hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Helen. I had not known she had passed. Helen had been my economics professor in college, and later, a mentor who had seen something in me that my own family never had. She was a fierce, sharp-tongued woman who had never married, never had children, and had spent her life investing in markets and in people she believed in. We had lost touch over the last 2 years as her health declined, and she retreated into privacy, a boundary I had respected perhaps too much. "I am so sorry," I managed to say, gripping the edge of my desk. "I did not know." She requested that the service be private. "Mr." Sterling said, his voice gravelly and gentle. "However, she named you in her trust. I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning." I assumed it was a keepsake, a book, perhaps, or a piece of jewelry. Helen knew I lived simply. When I arrived at the law office the next day, the room smelled of old paper and lemon polish. "Mr." Sterling sat behind a desk that looked large enough to land a plane on. He watched me with a curious expression as he slid a thick binder across the mahogany surface. "Helen was a very private woman," he began. "She was also an incredibly astute investor. Decades ago, she was an angel investor in a small medical technology startup. She believed in the science before anyone else did. That company was acquired last week by a global conglomerate." He paused, letting the silence settle. "The trust structure she set up is complex. Designed specifically for privacy and tax efficiency, you are the sole beneficiary." "Ariana?" I nodded, expecting a few $1,000s, maybe 10,000. That would be enough to update my kitchen. "Mr." Sterling opened the binder to a summary page and tapped a figure at the bottom. "The total liquidation value, after taxes and immediate fees, is just under $15 million. I stared at him, I stared at the paper. I looked at the number written there, but my brain refused to translate the symbols into reality. "I am sorry," I said, my voice sounding thin and far away. "I think there is a mistake." "No mistake," he said. Helen was very clear. She wrote a letter to accompany this. He handed me a cream-colored envelope. I recognized her handwriting immediately. Sharp, jagged loops in blue ink. I opened it, my hands trembling just enough to make the paper rattle. "Ariana, you have spent your whole life making yourself small so others could feel big. Stop it. Use this to build a wall, or a door, or a table, whatever you need. Just do not let them eat off your plate anymore. H." I cried then, not because of the money, but because she had seen me. She had seen the dynamic I had spent a lifetime trying to hide. "Mr. Sterling gave me time to compose myself. When I looked up, I was no longer just a risk analyst. I was a woman with $15 million and a terrifying secret. "I need to understand the privacy terms," I said, my compliance training kicking in. "Who knows about this, Mr. Sterling nodded approvingly. "Currently? Me, the trustees, and the IRS. The trust is named the H.R. Liberty Trust. Your name does not appear on public deed records if you buy property through it. The transfer has been structured to attract zero attention." "And my family?" I asked. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Unless you tell them. They will never know." I drove home in silence. The world looked exactly the same, which was the most disorienting part. The traffic on the expressway was still snarled. The gas station still advertised unleaded for $3.50. But I was vibrating with a frequency that felt dangerous. $15 million. It was enough to buy a house on the lake. It was enough to quit my job. It was enough to solve every problem my parents ever complained about. And that was exactly why I could not tell them. I sat on my beige sofa that night and let the memories wash over me, validating my decision. I remembered my college graduation. I had worked 2 jobs to pay for my tuition, so I would not have to ask my parents for loans. I had graduated magna cum laude. My parents had come to the ceremony. Yes, they had taken me to a chain restaurant for dinner afterwards. My father had shaken my hand and said, "Good job, Ari. We expected nothing less." 2 months later, Brooke had dropped out of beauty school because she found it too stifling. She had come home in tears, claiming she needed a fresh start. My parents had taken out a second mortgage to buy her a brand new car so she could drive to California and find herself. "She is fragile," my mother had told me when I questioned the fairness of it. "You are strong. Ariana, you figure things out. Brooke needs our help." They had punished me for my competence and rewarded her for her chaos. It was a pattern etched into the bone of our family. If they knew about this money, the narrative would shift instantly. I would no longer be the responsible one. I would be the bank. They would not ask. They would expect. And if I said no, I would be the villain who hoarded wealth while family suffered. No, I made a plan. I would pay off my small student loan balance. I would pay off my car. I would set up a donor-advised fund to support literacy programs. Something Helen would have loved. And I would change nothing else. I would go to work on Monday. I would drive my Toyota. I would wear my off-the-rack suits. I would keep my peace. For 3 months, it worked. I moved the money into diversified accounts managed by a firm Mr. Sterling recommended. I watched the numbers on the screen, feeling a strange detachment from them. It was not spending money. It was freedom. It was a shield. But I wanted to do something meaningful. Helen's letter had said to build a table. I decided to join a board. I found a local nonprofit focused on women's financial literacy. It was perfect. It was low profile, doing good work in the suburbs. I applied for a board seat, citing my background in compliance and risk management. I did not mention the trust. I did not mention the millions. I just wanted to help women learn how to protect themselves, just as I was learning. The executive director, a sharp woman named Sarah, was thrilled to have me. We have a standard vetting process for all board members. She had said during our coffee meeting, Just a background check to make sure there are no conflicts of interest or criminal records. Standard procedure. I nodded. Of course. I have nothing to hide. I filled out the forms. I authorized the check. I assumed, naively, that the vetting company would simply look for felonies or bankruptcies. I did not realize that in the age of data, wealth leaves a footprint, no matter how carefully you tread. 2 weeks after I submitted the paperwork, I was sitting in my cubicle at work, reviewing a spreadsheet on supply chain variances, when my personal cell phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Mom. Dad. Home. I let it go to voicemail. They usually only called if they needed help with a computer issue or to complain about a neighbor. Then it buzzed again immediately. Brooke. My stomach tightened. Brooke never called. She texted, usually with emojis and requests. But she rarely called unless she was in a crisis. I picked up. Hello? Ari! Her voice was high, breathless, and dripping with a sweetness that set my teeth on edge. Oh my God. Pick up. Pick up. Pick up. And you did. Hi. Hi, Brooke, I said, keeping my voice even. Is everything okay? Everything is great. She practically squealed. I was just sitting here, looking through old photos on my laptop, and I found that one of us at the lake house when we were kids. Do you remember? You had that terrible bowl cut? I leaned back in my chair, lowering my voice so my coworkers wouldn't hear. I remember. I just got so emotional. She said, I realized I have been such a bad sister lately. Life just gets so crazy, you know? But I miss you. I really miss you. The warning lights on my internal dashboard began to flash. Brooke did not do nostalgia. Brooke did not do apologies. I am right here. Brooke, I said, I haven't moved. I know. And that is a crime. We should fix it. We should do a sisters' weekend. Just the two of us. Spa, wine, gossip, my treat. Well, mostly my treat. You know I am broke. She laughed. A sound that was supposed to be charming but landed somewhere near desperate. I stayed silent for a beat too long. Ari, are you there? I am here, I said. That sounds nice, Brooke, but I am pretty swamped at work right now. Work, 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 she sighed. You are always working. But hey, that pays off, right? I bet you're doing really well lately. The question hung in the air, disguised as a casual observation. I am doing fine. I said, same job? Same condo? Really? She asked. Her tone shifted. Just a fraction. It became sharper. No big changes? Mom said she had a dream you moved. Mom had dreams I won the lottery every other week. It was her subconscious trying to solve her mortgage problems. No big changes. I lied. Just the same old grind. Well, you deserve a break, Brooke insisted, her manic energy returning. Seriously, think about the weekend. I want to reconnect. We need to stick together. Family is everything. Right? Right, I said. I hung up and stared at the phone. My hands were cold. That evening, I met my friend Elena for drinks at a quiet bar downtown. Elena was a cynical public defender who could smell a lie from 3 blocks away. I had told her about the money because I needed one person in the world to know, and I knew she would take the secret to her grave. She swirled her Pinot Noir and looked at me with dark, serious eyes after I recounted the call. It is a ping, she said. A ping? Like a submarine sonar, she said. She sends out a ping to see if it bounces off anything solid. Sudden kindness from people who have historically ignored you is not kindness. Ari, it is a transaction. She wants something. Maybe she just actually missed me, I said, hearing how weak it sounded even as I said it. Elena raised an eyebrow. Brooke? The sister who skipped your 30th birthday because she had tickets to a festival? The sister who borrowed $2,000 for rent and then posted photos of a new handbag the next day? I looked down at my drink. When you put it that way. She knows something, Elena said. Or she suspects something. Did you tell anyone else? No one. Just the attorney and the bank. And the non-profit, I added silently. But that was just a background check. I sipped my wine, trying to wash away the guilt. I felt guilty for doubting my own sister. I felt guilty for having this secret. I felt guilty for the $15 million sitting in accounts while my parents complained about gas prices. But then I remembered Helen's letter. Do not let them eat off your plate. I went home early. I needed to sleep. I needed to convince myself that I was being paranoid. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, and climbed into bed. The sheets were cool and crisp. I reached over to plug my phone into the charger. The screen lit up with a notification, a text message. It was from a number I did not recognize. No area code, just a string of digits that looked generated by a computer. I opened it. Congrats on the windfall. Your family already knows. The breath left my lungs in a rush. I stared at the words, reading them over and over until they blurred. Your family already knows. I sat up, clutching the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The silence of my condo suddenly didn't feel expensive or peaceful. It felt like the quiet before a storm. I looked at the door to my bedroom, half expecting to hear pounding on the front entrance, but there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a siren. They knew. I didn't know how, and I didn't know how much they knew. Did they know the number? Did they know about the trust? Or did they just know that the easy daughter, the invisible one, was suddenly the one holding all the cards? I turned off the phone and threw it onto the duvet. I curled my knees to my chest. My careful plan, my walls, my privacy, it had all been breached. The money I thought was a shield was about to become a weapon, just as I had feared, and my sister, with her sudden nostalgia and probing questions, was already aiming it straight at me. The morning after the text message arrived, I did not go to work. I called in sick, something I had not done in 3 years. My condo, usually a sanctuary of beige calm, felt like a glass box where everyone was watching but no one was waving. Your family already knows. The words sat in my mind like a stone in a shoe. I needed to know how. I needed to know who had sold me out. I started with the nonprofit. It was the only variable that had changed. I called Sarah, the executive director, at 9 o'clock sharp. I kept my voice steady, framing my inquiry as a concern about data security rather than a personal crisis. Sarah, I asked, I know the board vetting process is standard, but who actually handles the background checks? Is it an internal team or a vendor? It is a third-party vendor, Sarah said, sounding perplexed. A firm called Verity Shield. They are industry standard. Ariana, we have never had a breach. Why do you ask? I am just seeing some odd activity on my accounts. I lied. I wanted to verify who had eyes on my data. She promised to look into it. 2 hours later, she called back, her voice tight with apology. Ariana, I spoke to our account manager at Verity Shield. They insist their systems are secure. However, she hesitated. There was a junior analyst there, a guy named Kevin, who processed your file. He quit abruptly 2 weeks ago. My grip on the phone tightened. Where did he go? Sarah sighed. Apparently, he took a job at a boutique private investigation firm in Chicago. I am so sorry, Ariana. I can't imagine there is a connection, but it is an odd timing. It was not odd. It was linear. Someone had paid a private investigator to dig into me. That investigator had likely poached a low-level employee at a background check company to pull my raw financial data. It was dirty, it was illegal, and it was exactly the kind of desperate maneuver someone pulls when they smell blood in the water. But my family did not have the money to hire a high-end PI. That was the piece that did not fit, unless they had borrowed it, or unless they had promised a cut of the windfall they were sure was coming. By the time Friday arrived, the dread had calcified into a hard, cold knot in my stomach. I had not confronted them yet. I was waiting. And then, the invitation came. It was my mother, Elaine. Her voice on the phone was unrecognizable, warm, lilting, devoid of the jagged edges I had navigated since childhood. Ariana, honey, we were just saying it has been too long, she said. Dad and I want to take you girls to dinner. A real family dinner. Like old times. There were no old times like that. Our old times were silent car rides, arguments over money, and dinners where Brooke cried until she got what she wanted while I ate my peas in silence. That sounds interesting, I said. We made a reservation at the Oakhurst in Lake Briar. She continued, naming a steakhouse that was significantly outside their usual budget of chain restaurants with coupons. 7 o'clock on Saturday. Please, Ari, we just want to see you. We want the family to stick together. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. It killed the cat, but it also traps the human. I agreed to go because I needed to look them in the eyes. I needed to measure the blast radius. I drove to Lake Briar on Saturday evening. The Indiana sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that refused to fall. I parked my Toyota between a Mercedes and a Lexus, feeling the familiar imposter syndrome rising in my throat. But then I remembered the bank balance. I could buy this restaurant if I wanted to. I could buy the Mercedes. I could buy the Lexus. I did not want those things. I just wanted to be safe. My parents were already seated when I walked in. They were at a round booth in the corner, the kind that offered privacy. My father, Martin, was wearing his funeral suit, a navy blue number that was slightly too tight across the shoulders. My mother had her hair done, stiff with hairspray, and was wearing a silk scarf I had never seen before. "Ariana!" my mother cried out, standing up to hug me. The embrace was tight, perfumed, and terrifying. She held on for 3 seconds too long. "You look wonderful. Just wonderful. Doesn't she look wonderful?" "Martin?" "She looks like $1,000,000, my father said, grinning. The phrase made my skin crawl. I sat down, keeping my purse on my lap. "Where is Brooke?" "She is running a little late. You know how she is." My mother waved a hand dismissively. "But she is so excited to see you. We all are." The waiter arrived, and my father ordered a bottle of Cabernet that I knew cost $80. He didn't even look at the price list. "We are celebrating," he announced. "Celebrating what?" I asked, unfolding my napkin. "Family," my mother said quickly, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "Just family. We realized we haven't been appreciative enough of you. Ariana, you work so hard. You are so responsible. We are just so proud of the woman you have become." I sat there, dissecting the sentence. In the past, responsible was a code word for boring. Now, it was being delivered like a eulogy of praise. "I appreciate that," I said carefully, "but nothing has changed. I am doing the same job I was doing last year." My father swirled his wine. "Well, you never know when things might change. Life is funny that way. It rewards the good ones eventually." They knew. They absolutely knew. They were dancing around it, waiting for me to drop the news so they could act surprised. But the greed was radiating off them like heat off pavement. They were terrified of spooking me. Then Brooke arrived. She swept into the dining room like she was walking a red carpet. She was wearing a black dress that was cut low in the front and high in the thigh, the kind of dress you wear to a club. Not a family dinner in Indiana. Her hair was freshly blown out, bouncing with every step. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, sliding into the booth next to me. The traffic was a nightmare. She grabbed me in a hug that felt more like a tackle. Her perfume was heavy, vanilla and something sharp, like ambition. "Hi, sissy," she whispered in my ear. "You look great," I said, pulling back. "I feel great," she said, beaming. She signaled the waiter for a glass of champagne. "Not the wine," she told him. "I want the bubbles." My parents watched her with indulgent smiles. Usually, her lateness would trigger a lecture from my father about respect and time management. Tonight, he just smiled. "We were just telling Ariana how proud we are of her," my mother said. "As we should be." Brooke raised her glass, which the waiter had filled with impressive speed, to Ariana. The quiet achiever. We clinked glasses. The crystal chimed. I took a small sip. "So, Brooke," I said, deciding to poke the bear, "what are you up to these days? Still working at the boutique?" Brooke laughed. A harsh, brittle sound. "That place? No, I quit last week. Small minds, small paychecks. I am looking at bigger things now. Entrepreneurial things." "Oh?" I asked. Yeah, real estate. Maybe. Or investing. You need capital to make capital, right? She winked at me. The dinner progressed in a surreal haze of compliments. My mother told me my skin looked glowing. My father asked my opinion on the bond market, a subject he had literally never expressed interest in before. They apologized for missing my birthday 3 years ago. They apologized for not visiting Chicago more often, but the apologies were vague, slippery things. They never said I am sorry we treated you like an afterthought. They said I am sorry we were so busy. It was gaslighting by way of affection. The crack in the facade happened over dessert. We were sharing a chocolate lava cake, another extravagance, when Brooke leaned back, looking satisfied and slightly tipsy. It is funny, she said, twirling her spoon. I was reading this article the other day about these old trusts, how they work. It is fascinating stuff. My heart hammered. Is it? I asked. Yeah, like how you can hide things in them. Assets, stocks. She looked directly at me, her eyes glittering. It is amazing what an old teacher can leave behind, isn't it? The table went silent. The air left the booth. My mother froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. My father coughed. I put my spoon down slowly. What did you say? I asked, my voice very quiet. Brooke blinked, realizing she had gone off script. I just said, it is amazing what teachers teach us. No, I said, you said what an old teacher can leave behind. Brooke's smile faltered, then returned as a smirk, a nasty, triumphant little curl of the lip. Well, it is a small world. Ari, people talk. Who talks? I asked. Who are you talking to? My mother slammed her glass down. Okay. Let's not ruin a lovely evening with interrogation. Brooke just meant... She meant that you had that mentor, that woman. We know she passed away recently. We just assumed. Well, we hoped she left you a nice book or something. They were lying. They were lying so poorly it was insulting. You know, I said, looking at each of them in turn. I stood up. Ariana, sit down, my father said, his voice dropping the proud dad act and returning to its usual command. I will not. Brooke leaned forward. Oh, stop being so dramatic. So you got lucky. Why is it a state secret? We are your family. We are just happy for you. Why do you have to make everything so weird? I looked at my sister. I saw the hunger in her face. It wasn't just about money. It was about the score. She couldn't stand that I had something she didn't. She couldn't stand that the easy one had won the lottery of life while she was still scraping by. I grabbed my purse. I am leaving. I said, do not follow me. I walked out of the restaurant, my legs shaking. I could feel their eyes on my back. I expected one of them to chase me, but they didn't. They let me go. They knew they had played their hand too early, and now they needed to regroup. I drove home in silence, the radio off. When I got back to my condo, I felt dirty. I wanted to shower, to scrub the scent of that restaurant and their desperation off my skin. I sat on my couch and opened my laptop. I needed to distract myself. I logged onto social media, a habit I usually avoided. My notifications were blown up. 99 plus. I clicked the icon. Brooke had been busy. She had posted a photo album titled Sisters Forever. It was a curated collection of the few photos where we looked happy together as children. Me pushing her on a swing. Us hugging at Christmas. The caption read, so incredibly proud of my big sister Ariana. She has worked so hard and deserves every blessing coming her way. Family is the only thing that matters. Love you to the moon and back. Ari. Sisters. Blessed family first. She had tagged me in every single photo. Beneath the post, my cousins, aunts, and family friends were commenting. So sweet. Ariana is such a good girl. You two are goals. Wonderful news. Whatever it is. She was marking her territory. She was publicly claiming closeness so that when the news eventually broke, or when she started asking for things, I would look like a monster if I said no. Look how much she loves her sister. The world would say, why is Ariana being so cold? It was a trap. A brilliant, social trap. I could not just delete the tags. That would look petty. I could not comment. That would validate it. I closed the laptop and took a breath. Helen's voice echoed in my head. Build a wall. I needed a paper trail. If they were going to play games, I was going to play compliance. I opened my email and drafted a message to my parents and Brooke. I kept it cold, professional, and clear. Subject: boundaries regarding our relationship. Dad, Brooke. Following tonight's dinner, I feel it is necessary to set some clear boundaries. I am not comfortable with the inquiries into my personal finances or my professional life. Moving forward, I am requesting that we do not discuss money, assets, or estate matters. If we cannot have a relationship without these topics, I will need to take a step back from communication. I hope you can respect this. Ariana. I hit send. My hands were trembling. The reply came 20 minutes later. It was from my mother. Ariana. I am weeping as I write this. We try to show you love, and you send us a legal briefing? We are your parents. We sacrificed everything for you. We paid for your braces. We co-signed your first apartment. We drove you to band practice for 6 years. We have never asked you for a thing. Now, when we just want to share in your joy, you shut us out? You are breaking our hearts. Brooke is crying. I hope your money keeps you warm at night, because you are becoming a very cold person. Mom. The guilt hit me like a physical wave. We sacrificed everything. It was the button they had installed in me at birth, and they were mashing it with all their might. I almost typed a reply. I almost apologized. But then I looked at my bank account again. I looked at the memory of Brooke's smirk. It is a small world. I did not reply. 3 days of silence followed. I went to work. I avoided the break room. I watched my phone like it was a bomb. Then, the tactic changed. The guilt trip hadn't worked. So they switched to the partnership. Brooke sent me a direct message on Instagram. No emojis this time. Hey Ari, look, I am sorry about dinner. Mom and Dad are just intense. You know how they are? I actually wanted to talk to you about something real, not charity, business. I didn't reply. But she continued. I have this opportunity. There is a foreclosure in Lake Briar. Victorian. Good bones. I have a contractor lined up. If we buy it cash, flip it in 6 months. We double the investment. I can run the project. You just put up the capital. We split the profit 50-50. It would be something we do together, like sisters. I want to prove to you I can work hard. Let me show you. She attached a Zillow link and a half-baked PDF business plan that looked like she had made it in 10 minutes. The house was listed for $400,000. She wanted me to give her nearly $500,000 based on a PDF and a sister's promise. I wrote back, Brooke, I am not investing in real estate right now, and as I said in my email, I am not discussing finances with family. Please stop asking. The response was instantaneous. The mask did not just slip, it shattered. You are so selfish. You always have been. You think you are better than us because you have a boring job and no husband? You are sitting on a gold mine and you won't even help your own sister get a leg up? Mom and Dad are drowning in credit card debt and you don't even care. You are punishing the family because you are a miserable, lonely bitch. I stared at the screen, stunned by the vitriol. Then, 3 minutes later, a new message appeared. Sorry, that was my anxiety talking. I am just really stressed. I didn't mean it. Love you. Forget I asked. Whiplash. Pure emotional whiplash. She was testing every door, trying to find the one that was unlocked. Rage, pity, guilt, charm. I blocked her on Instagram, then I blocked her on Facebook. I thought that would buy me some time. I thought I had set the boundary. I was wrong. 2 days later, on a Thursday, I came home to find a certified letter in my mailbox. The return address was a law office in Indianapolis I didn't recognize. My heart rate spiked. I tore the envelope open right there in the lobby. It was a notification of a default on a business loan. Outstanding debt obligation. Lux Flip LLC. Principal borrower. Brooke Price. Guarantor/party of interest. Ariana Price. I scanned the document, my vision blurring. It was a notice that a loan for $50,000, taken out 6 months ago by a company called LuxFlip LLC, was in default. The letter stated that as a named potential guarantor and party with confirmed interest, I was being notified of the intent to collect. I had never heard of LuxFlip LLC. I had never signed for a loan, but there was my name, not just my name, but my address. My social security number was redacted, but the last 4 digits matched. Brooke hadn't just asked for money for a flip. She had already started one. She had taken out a high-interest private loan, likely from a predatory lender, and she had listed me. She hadn't forged my signature as a co-signer, not yet, but she had listed me as a guarantor or backer, likely using the rumor of my wealth or her own lies to secure the cash. She had told the lender, "My sister is rich. She is backing me. Here is her info." And now that Brooke hadn't paid, the sharks were circling my chum. I stood in the lobby of my building, the letter shaking in my hand. This wasn't family drama anymore. This wasn't just gaslighting or guilt trips. My sister had dragged me into a legal mess I didn't consent to. She had weaponized my identity. The boundary was gone. The war had begun. I sat in the office of Matteo Klein, a man whose suit was sharper than his smile. He was not a warm, grandfatherly figure like Mr. Sterling. Matteo was a litigator. He dealt in damage control, restraining orders, and the ugly, visceral combat of civil disputes. I had hired him 3 days after receiving the certified letter, on the recommendation of a corporate attorney at my firm, who told me Matteo was the person you called when you wanted a problem to stop breathing down your neck. "This is a mess," Matteo said, tossing the letter onto his glass desk. It made a sharp slap sound that echoed in the quiet room. "I know," I said, gripping my purse. "Is it valid? Can they come after me? Legally?" "It is a stretch," he said, leaning back. "They have listed you as a party of interest. In the lending world, that is usually code for, we have been told this person has money and might feel guilty enough to pay. You did not sign the promissory note. You are not on the LLC paperwork. However, the lender is aggressive. They are a second-tier private equity lender, the kind that breaks kneecaps with paperwork." He pulled up a file on his tablet. "Here is the reality. Ariana, your sister, Brooke, did not just borrow money for a flip. She co-signed a high-interest bridge loan for a partner, a man named Todd Everson, who I believe is her husband." "Yes," I said. "Todd, he bounces between sales jobs." "Right. Well, Todd and Brooke formed LuxFlip LLC. They borrowed $50,000 at 18% interest to buy a property that, from what I can see, has significant liens against it already. They have missed 3 payments. The lender is calling the loan. Brooke likely told them you were a silent partner to buy time. She lied." I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "I never agreed to anything." "I believe you," Matteo said. "But in civil court, the truth is often less important than the documentation. And right now, the documentation suggests Brooke is creating a narrative that you are involved. We need to kill that narrative. Aggressively. What do? We document everything," Matteo said, counting off on his fingers. "Every text, every email, every voicemail. Do not delete anything. Second, we traced the leak. You said you think they found out about your inheritance through a background check?" "I thought so." I said, "But now I'm not sure." "We need to know," he said. "If they obtained your financial data illegally, that is leverage. That is a crime. And frankly, Ariana, you need to consider a restraining order if this escalates. A restraining order against my sister?" The words tasted like ash. "If she is forging your involvement in financial instruments, she is not your sister right now," Matteo said coldly. "She is a liability. You need to decide what you want to protect more, your assets or your family's feelings, because you cannot protect both." I left his office with a list of tasks and a heavy heart. The first task was the leak. Matteo's investigator had run a preliminary sweep of my credit inquiries. The next day, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of cold coffee. Staring at the report Matteo had emailed me, it wasn't the nonprofit, The timing didn't align. The inquiry from the background check company had been clean and contained, but there was another hit. 6 weeks ago, 2 weeks before Brooke called me with her sudden nostalgia, there had been a soft pull on my credit report from a regional bank in Indiana, the bank where my parents had held their checking accounts for 40 years. I called the bank. I spent 40 minutes on hold, navigating automated menus, until I finally got a fraud specialist on the line. I did not authorize this inquiry. I told the woman, my voice trembling with suppressed rage, I do not bank with you. I live in Illinois. Why were you looking at my file? Let me check the access log. The specialist said. She sounded bored. Typing in the background. Okay, it looks like this was an internal review initiated by a branch manager in Lake Briar. Did you apply for a cosign on a mortgage? No. I said, never. That is strange, she muttered. The notes say, Family Association Review. The employee ID belongs to, let me see, a Jason Miller. The name hit me. Jason Miller. He was Todd's cousin, Brooke's husband's cousin. He had worked as a teller for years, but apparently he had moved up. Thank you, I said, and hung up. It wasn't a sophisticated hack. It was small-town nepotism. Brooke or Todd had likely asked Jason to just check if I was really doing as well as I seemed. Jason had run my name, seen the credit score, seen the recent payoffs of my student loans, and perhaps seen the massive transfer of assets that had momentarily flagged in the national banking system when the trust was funded. He had seen the smoke, and he had reported back that there was a fire. I felt violated. My financial privacy had been stripped away over a family dinner table. I needed to confront them, not via email, not via text. I called my parents' landline that evening. My father answered on the second ring. Hello? Dad? It is Ariana? Ariana? He boomed, his voice falsely cheerful. We were just talking about you. Did you get Mom's email? We have been so worried. You just vanished after dinner. Stop it, I said. The cheerfulness evaporated. Excuse me? I know about Jason Miller. I said, I know he ran my credit report at the bank. I know Brooke put him up to it. That is a federal crime. Dad, it is a violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy silence. Then, my mother picked up the extension. Ariana, stop using big words to scare your father, she snapped. Jason was just being helpful. Brooke was worried about you. She thought maybe you were in trouble because you are always so secretive. They were just checking to make sure you were okay. Checking my credit score is checking if I am okay? I asked, incredulous. We are a family. Ariana! My mother shouted. Why do you have to make everything so transactional? Yes, we know you have money. We know you came into a windfall. Why is that such a terrible thing for us to know? Why can't you just help your sister? There it was, the pivot. They didn't deny the snooping. They justified it as love. She listed me on a defaulted loan. Mom! I shouted back, losing my cool for the first time. She committed fraud. She is trying to make me pay her debts. She is drowning. Ariana! My father cut in. His voice was shaking. Todd lost his job 3 months ago. They have payments due. They have the baby. Well, they were thinking about a baby. They are desperate. You have millions sitting there doing nothing. We are just asking for a lifeline. It is not a lifeline, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. It is an anchor. You want me to carry them. We want you to be a sister, my mother said, and her voice was filled with such venomous disappointment that it hurt more than the shouting. We raised you to care about people, not numbers. I hung up. I sat on my floor and cried for 10 minutes. Then I stopped. Crying was not compliance. Crying was not a strategy. I thought the confrontation would end it. I thought knowing that I knew about the illegal credit check would scare them off. I underestimated Brooke. If she couldn't get to me privately, she would get to me publicly. She knew I valued my career above almost anything else. My professional reputation was the one thing I had built entirely on my own, without their interference. 2 days later, my LinkedIn notifications began to ping. I opened the app and froze. Brooke had not just viewed my profile. She had started commenting on my connections posts. She had sent connection requests to my boss, my colleagues, and the other board members at the nonprofit. But she wasn't posting abuse. That would have been easy to report. She was posting praise. On a post by my company's CEO about our quarterly earnings, Brooke had commented, "So inspiring. My sister, Ariana Price, speaks so highly of your leadership. It is amazing to see how much she has learned from you that she is now applying to her own new charitable foundation." Proud Sister Philanthropy. On a post by a colleague about a charity run, "Love this. Ariana is looking for causes to support with her new trust. I will tell her to check this out." She was painting a target on my back. She was announcing to my professional network that I was wealthy, that I was giving money away, and that she was the gatekeeper. I walked into work the next day, and the atmosphere had shifted. People looked at me differently. A junior analyst stopped me at the coffee machine. "Hey, Ari," he said, smiling a little too widely. "I saw your sister's comment on LinkedIn. I didn't know you were starting a foundation. That is incredible. My aunt actually runs a shelter for—" I cut him off. "My sister is confused." I said, my voice brittle. "There is no foundation, but the damage was done." Brooke was weaponizing my success. She was trying to force me into the role of the benefactor. If I denied it, I looked stingy. If I ignored it, the requests would pile up. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I felt trapped. It was a psychological siege. She was using admiration as a chokehold. I pulled out my phone and called Matteo. "She is attacking my reputation." I said, "Is she defaming you?" He asked. "No, she is praising me. She is telling everyone I am rich." Matteo sighed. "That is not illegal." Ariana, "It is annoying. But truth is a defense against defamation. You are rich, but she is doing it to harass me." "Then we send a cease and desist," he said. "But be warned. Sending a legal threat to a family member often escalates the behavior before it stops it. It tells them they have gotten under your skin. They are already under my skin." I whispered, "They have been there my whole life." That night, I couldn't sleep. I started digging through my own old filing cabinets, looking for anything I could use to understand the history of this entitlement. I found an old box of paperwork from my college years. I sifted through old tuition receipts, grade reports, and bank statements, and then I found it, a credit card statement from when I was 19. I remembered the card. My parents had opened it in my name to help you build credit. I had never held the physical card. They had kept it in the safe at home. "We will just put gas on it and pay it off," my father had said. "Trust us." I looked at the statement. The charges were not for gas. Best Buy, $400. Tire Rack, $600. Liquor World, $80. They had maxed it out in 3 months. It had taken me 2 years of waitressing to pay off the balance after I graduated and found out about the debt. At the time, I had swallowed it. I had thought it was my fault for not checking. I had thought, they are bad with money. They didn't mean to hurt me. But looking at it now, with the lens of the last few weeks, I saw the pattern. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a resource. When I was a child, I was the resource of emotional stability, the one who didn't cry. When I was a teenager, I was the resource of credit, the fresh Social Security number they could use. Now, I was the resource of capital. They didn't hate me. They just felt entitled to consume me. The realization made me feel hollow. It was a grief sharper than death. It was the death of the hope that they might one day just love me for me. My phone buzzed on the floor next to me. It was an email. The subject line was blank. The sender was an encrypted address. "Ms. Price, I am a private investigator based in Chicago. I was contacted 3 months ago by a party wishing to locate your assets. I declined the job after a preliminary ethical review, but I tracked the inquiry. I have proof of how they found you. It goes deeper than a bank teller. They paid a fee to a data broker who specializes in skip tracing for debt collection. They treated you like a fugitive they needed to catch. I can provide the receipt and the email chain for a fee of $1,000. It will prove premeditation. Let me know. I stared at the screen. It felt like a setup. It could be Brooke trying to scam me out of $1,000. It could be the PI who hired the background check guy, trying to play both sides. But my gut told me it was real. The specific language, skip tracing, rang true. That was what you did when you were looking for someone who owed you money. My family had skip traced me. I forwarded the email to Matteo with a note. Vet this. If he is real, pay him. I needed to know the depth of the betrayal. I needed to see the receipt that proved my parents had hunted me down. The week ended with a storm. Rain lashed against the windows of my condo, turning the Chicago skyline into a gray smear. I was sitting at my dining table, organizing the documentation Matteo had asked for, stacks of printed emails, screenshots of texts, the credit report. It looked like a conspiracy theorist's wall. There was a knock at the door. I froze. My building had a doorman. No one came up unless I buzzed them in. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was a courier, a bike messenger, dripping wet. "Miss Price?" he called out. "Delivery." I opened the door on the chain. "Who is it from?" "No name. Just a rush delivery." I signed for the envelope. It was thick, manila, and sealed with heavy tape. I took it into the kitchen and cut it open. Inside was a single photograph. It wasn't a digital printout. It was a glossy photograph of a document lying on a wooden table. I squinted at the image. The document was titled, Family Asset Redistribution Agreement. It was dated 4 years ago. The text was legalese, but the gist was terrifyingly simple. It stated that, in the event of any significant financial gain, inheritance, or lottery winning acquired by Ariana Price, 50% of said assets shall be transferred to the Price Family Trust for the benefit of Brooke Price and Martin/Elaine Price. And there, at the bottom, was my signature. It was my signature, the loop of the A, the sharp slant of the P. It looked exactly like the way I signed my checks, but I had never seen this document in my life. I had never signed a family asset redistribution agreement. Such a thing didn't even make legal sense. It looked like something downloaded from a questionable legal template site and modified. But the date, 4 years ago, that was before Helen died, before the money. If they produced this in court, if they claimed I had signed a contract promising them half of my future wealth, my blood ran cold. They weren't just reacting to the money. They were rewriting history to claim it. They had forged my signature on a contract that made my autonomy null and void. I looked closer at the photo. In the corner of the frame, barely visible on the wooden table, was a set of keys. On the keychain was a small, pink plastic flamingo. I knew that keychain. It belonged to Brooke. She had forged this. She had sat at her kitchen table, practiced my signature, and created a fake contract to hold over my head. This wasn't just a loan dispute anymore. This was a conspiracy to defraud. I dropped the photo on the counter. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't breathe. The twists of the past few weeks had been about boundaries and emotional manipulation, but this was a crime, and it meant there was no going back. I couldn't just block them. I couldn't just ignore them. I had to destroy them, or they would take everything I had. The document lay on Matteo's desk, a high-resolution print of the photograph I had received. Under the harsh fluorescent lights of the conference room, the clumsiness of the forgery was even more apparent. Yet that did not make it any less dangerous. "It is a cut-and-paste job," Matteo said, leaning over the image with a magnifying glass. "Look at the pixelation around your signature block compared to the body text. They lifted your signature from another document, likely a birthday card or an old check, and scanned it onto this." I stared at the paper. Family Asset Redistribution Agreement. The title sounded like something a child would invent to sound official. "The date is the smoking gun," Matteo continued, tapping the corner of the page. "It is dated November 12th, 4 years ago. Where were you on that date?" I opened my phone calendar. Scrolling back through the years, I lived by my calendar. I was in Seattle. I said, "I was at a compliance seminar for the entire week. I have the flight receipts. I have the hotel folio. I could not have signed a document in Indiana." Matteo nodded. looking satisfied but grim. Good. That makes it provably false in court. But the intent here is what worries me. This is not just a threat. Ariana, this is a personal guarantee. The language here attempts to bind you to any debt incurred by the Price Family Trust, which likely does not exist, or its agents, meaning Brooke. She is carrying this around to show creditors. She is telling them, look, my rich sister signed off on everything years ago. She is good for it. She is buying time, I said, feeling a wave of nausea. She is using my name as collateral. Precisely. And when the creditors come calling and you refuse to pay, she will produce this to claim you are in breach of contract. It won't hold up, but it will drag you into litigation for months. He sat back, removing his glasses. Ariana, this crosses the line from harassment to criminal fraud. We need to file a police report. I hesitated. The police, arresting my sister. If we do that, I said, there is no coming back. Mateo looked at me, his eyes dark and serious. There is already no coming back. They forged your signature. That is not a family squabble. That is a felony. I left his office with the instruction to file the report, but I couldn't do it yet. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. Later that afternoon, I drove to a nondescript diner on the south side of the city to meet the private investigator who had emailed me. He had asked to meet in person to exchange the evidence. I sat in a booth near the back, watching the door. A man walked in 5 minutes late. He was in his 50s, wearing a gray windbreaker and a baseball cap. He looked like a retired cop or a tired contractor. He spotted me and slid into the booth opposite mine. Ms. Price, he said, I am Vance. I did not offer my hand. You said you have proof. He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table. He kept his hand over it. $1,000. Cash. As agreed. I slid a white envelope across the table. He peeked inside, counted the bills with a practiced thumb, and nodded. He released the folder. I opened it. Inside was a printout of an email chain and a transaction receipt. The email was from an address I recognized. brookp_realestate@gmail.com. Subject: Locate request. Urgent. To Omnitrace Solutions. I need a full asset search and current address for Ariana Price. She is a relative, but we have lost touch and there is a family emergency. I need to know where she banks and if there have been any large deposits in the last 6 months. I am willing to pay the premium for expedited service. The date was 3 weeks before she had called me to propose the sisters' weekend. She hired a skip tracer, Vance said, sipping the water the waitress had dropped off. That is a service usually used by repo men to find people who are dodging car payments. She paid $400 for the basic package. Then another $200 for the financial deep dive. I felt a cold verification settle in my chest. It wasn't just curiosity, it was a hunt. But here is the part you really need to know, Vance said, leaning in. He lowered his voice. I used to work in compliance audit for a medical supply firm. I audited your department once, about 5 years ago. I remember you. You were the only one who actually read the footnotes. I looked at him, surprised. That is why you contacted me? Partly. I respect a professional, but mostly because I looked into why your sister is so desperate. He slid a second sheet of paper across the table. It was a docket sheet from the county clerk's office in Indiana. She is being sued, Vance said, not by a bank, by her former business partner in a venture called Elite Events. They took deposits for 3 weddings and never delivered. The partner claims Brooke embezzled the deposit money to pay off her husband's gambling debts. My mouth fell open. Gambling debts? Todd, Vance said. He plays online poker. Badly. He is in the hole for about $40,000. The partner is suing Brooke for $60,000. And the kicker? Todd filed for separation 2 weeks ago. He is trying to leave her before the lawsuit hits hard. I stared at the paper. The pieces clicked into a horrific picture. Brooke wasn't just greedy. She was drowning. Her marriage was collapsing. She was facing a lawsuit for fraud, and her husband had gambled away their liquidity. She saw my inheritance not as a luxury, but as the only life raft that could keep her out of jail and keep her husband from leaving. She needs a savior, Vance said, and you are it, whether you want to be or not. I drove home in a daze. The malice I had attributed to her suddenly looked like panic. Panic is dangerous. Panic makes people forge signatures and hire skip tracers. Panic makes people believe their own lies, because the truth is too terrifying to look at. I decided to try one last time, not to save her, I couldn't save her from this, but to give her an off-ramp before I went to the police. I unblocked her number and sent a text. Meet me at the Daily Grind in downtown Chicago. Tomorrow, 10 in the morning. Come alone. If you bring mom or dad, I leave. If you are late, I leave. She replied instantly. I will be there. Thank you. Ari? Thank you. The coffee shop was busy, filled with the clatter of espresso machines and the murmur of corporate meetings. I chose a table in the center of the room, visible from all angles. I wanted witnesses. Brooke arrived 10 minutes early. I watched her through the window before I went in. She looked ragged. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked younger, smaller, and terrified. When I sat down, she burst into tears. Ari, she sobbed, reaching for my hand. I am so sorry. I know I messed up. I know I came on too strong. I pulled my hand back. You hired a skip tracer. Brooke, you forged a document with my signature. Her face went pale. Who told you that? It does not matter. I said, I know. I know about the lawsuit. I know about Todd. I know about the gambling debts. She flinched as if I had slapped her. She looked down at her coffee cup, her shoulders shaking. I panicked. She whispered, Todd, he said he was going to leave. He said if I didn't fix the money, he was done. I didn't know what to do. And then I heard rumors that you had come into money. So you decided to steal it? I asked. I wasn't stealing, she insisted, looking up with sudden intensity. I was just borrowing it. I was going to pay you back. I just needed to show the creditors that I had backing so they would stop calling. I figured, you are my sister. You would want to help. I stared at her. The delusion was absolute. Brooke, I said slowly, you forged my name on a guarantee. That is a crime. You are trying to make me liable for your fraud. But you have so much, she hissed, her voice rising. I saw the credit report. $15 million. Ari? $15 million? And you are sitting here lecturing me about 40,000? You have always had it so easy. I blinked. Easy? Yes, easy, she cried. You don't have a husband who drains your account. You don't have the pressure of being the pretty one, the one everyone expects to be a star. You just go to your boring job and come home to your quiet condo. You have no idea what real stress is. You owe me this. Ari, you owe me for all the times I took the heat off you growing up. I sat back, stunned by the warped architecture of her logic. In her mind, my stability was a privilege I had been gifted, not something I had built brick by brick. In her mind, her chaos was a burden she had been unfairly saddled with, entitling her to compensation. Brooke, I said, my voice shaking with restraint. I worked 2 jobs in college while you dropped out. I saved every dollar while you bought cars. My life is quiet because I made it quiet. You are selfish, she spat. You are a cold, selfish... Ariana! The voice boomed from the entrance. I turned. My parents were marching toward the table. My father looked furious. My mother looked stricken, clutching her purse to her chest. I told you to come alone. I said to Brooke, standing up. She didn't have a choice, my mother shouted, causing the entire coffee shop to fall silent. We drove her here because she was too upset to drive. How dare you? Ariana? Look at your sister. Look at what you're doing to her. I am doing nothing to her, I said, backing away. She did this to herself. She is in trouble, my father yelled, stepping into my personal space. He looked red-faced, veins bulging in his neck. Real trouble. And you are sitting here with your millions, acting like a judge. You are breaking this family. Ariana, I am breaking the family? I asked, my voice rising. She forged my signature. She hired a private investigator to stalk me. She is desperate, my mother wailed, grabbing Brooke's shoulders as Brooke sobbed into her hands. People do things when they are desperate. If you had just shared with us in the beginning, none of this would have happened. You forced her hand by hiding the money. The room spun. They were rewriting reality in real time, in their version of the story. My privacy was the aggression. My silence was the provocation. Brooke's fraud was merely a reaction to my cruelty. It was a closed loop of insanity. There was no entry point for logic. I grabbed my purse. I am done. I said, I am leaving. Do not follow me. You walk out that door, my father threatened, pointing a finger at my face, and you are dead to us. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had sat at the head of the dinner table my entire life. The man whose approval I had craved for 30 years. I looked at my mother, who was currently stroking Brooke's hair and glaring at me with pure hatred. I realized then that I had been dead to them for a long time. I was only alive when I was useful. I turned and walked out. I heard my mother screaming my name as I pushed through the glass doors, but I didn't look back. I drove for an hour, aimlessly, until my hands stopped shaking. When I finally returned to my condo, I felt hollowed out. I wanted to crawl into bed and sleep for a week, but the assault wasn't over. My mailbox was overflowing. It was usually empty, save for a few flyers. Today, it was jammed tight. I pulled out a handful of envelopes. They were handwritten. Some were on stationery, some on notebook paper. I recognized the return addresses: my Aunt Linda in Ohio, my cousin Mark in Florida, a second cousin I hadn't seen since I was 10. I carried them upstairs and opened one from Aunt Linda. Dearest Ariana, Brooke told us the wonderful news about your settlement. I know you are probably overwhelmed, but I wanted to reach out. Your Uncle Bob has been having such trouble with his hip surgery bills, and we heard you were looking to help family. It would mean the world to us. I opened another, Ariana. Congrats on the big win. Brooke said you won a lawsuit? That is crazy. Anyway, I am trying to start a food truck business and I need about 10 grand for a down payment. And another, Ariana. I heard you are refusing to share your winnings with your parents. I have to say, I am disgusted. After all they did for you, money really is the root of all evil. I hope you are happy with your greed. Brooke had been busy. She hadn't just told them I was rich. She had spun a specific narrative. Ariana won a settlement. Ariana is hoarding it. Ariana is refusing to help mom and dad. She had recruited the flying monkeys. She had weaponized the extended family, people who didn't know the truth, to pressure me. She knew I hated conflict. She knew I cared about being seen as the good one. She was betting that I would pay her off just to make the letters stop. I sat on my floor, surrounded by the requests and the judgments of strangers who shared my DNA. I felt dirty. I felt hunted. I called Mateo. I want to issue a statement, I said, my voice thick with exhaustion. I want to post the truth on social media. I want to tell everyone that there was no settlement, that it is a trust, and that Brooke is a fraud. Don't, Mateo said. Why? I demanded. They are destroying my name. Because if you go public, you confirm the money exists, he said. Right now, it is just a rumor. If you post a defense, you validate the premise. And if you call Brooke a fraud in a public forum before she is convicted of a crime, she can sue you for defamation. It doesn't matter if it is true. She can tie you up in court for years, which is exactly what she wants. She wants to force a settlement. So I have to sit here and let them lie about me? I asked. I have to let them tell the world I am a monster? You have to be smarter than them, Mateo said gentle. Silence is your best weapon right now. Let them scream. We are building the legal case. The police report is filed. The restraining order hearing is next week. Trust the process. I hung up. I didn't trust the process. The process was slow. The pain was immediate. I gathered the letters and threw them into the recycling bin. I wanted to burn them, but my condo didn't have a fireplace. I wandered into my small home office. On the shelf, tucked behind a row of textbooks, was the thick folder Mr. Sterling had given me, the estate documents, I pulled it down. I needed to feel close to Helen. I needed to remember that someone, somewhere, had actually seen me. I opened the folder. Inside the back pocket, sealed with a red wax sticker, was an envelope I hadn't opened yet. Mr. Sterling had told me it was for later. The label on the envelope was written in Helen's sharp script. If your family comes back when money appears. I stared at the envelope. Helen had known. She hadn't just guessed. She had known with the certainty of a woman who understood human nature. I broke the seal. Inside were 3 sheets of paper. The first was a handwritten letter from Helen. Ariana, if you are reading this, they have found you. I suspected they would. Vultures have an excellent sense of smell. You are likely feeling guilty. You are likely wondering if you are being too hard on them. You are likely wondering if you owe them something. You do not. I need you to understand something I never told you while I was alive. I did not just leave you this money because you were a good student. I left it to you because I saw what they did to you. I was there. Ariana, I saw it. Read the attached document. I turned the page. It was a photocopy of a document from the University Financial Aid Office, dated from my sophomore year of college. I remembered that year. I had applied for a hardship grant because my tuition payments had bounced. My parents had told me there was a bank error. I had spent weeks in the financial aid office, crying, trying to keep my enrollment. The document in my hand was a log of a meeting between the Dean of Students and Dr. Helen Rourke. Notes. Dr. Rourke expressed concern regarding student Ariana Price. Witnessed parents, Martin and Elaine Price, in the parking lot, pressuring student to sign over residual financial aid checks. Parents were observed shouting and using physical intimidation. Student appeared distressed. Dr. Rourke intervened and offered to pay the balance of the semester anonymously to prevent student from withdrawing. I gasped. I remembered that day in the parking lot. My father had grabbed my arm. He had told me they needed the refund check for the mortgage. I had given it to them. I had eaten ramen for 4 months because of it. But I hadn't known Helen had seen it, and I hadn't known she had paid my balance. I thought the financial aid office had just worked it out. I turned to the 3rd page. It was a memo from a private investigation firm, a different one, dated 10 years ago. Subject: asset tracing. Price family. Client: Helen Rourke. Summary: the subjects, Martin and Elaine Price, have a history of utilizing their children's identities for credit expansion. We have located a small business account in the name of Ariana Price Consulting, opened when the subject was 17. The account was used to funnel cash from unreported side jobs to avoid tax liability. The account is currently overdrawn. My hands shook so hard the paper rattled. They hadn't just used a credit card. They had opened a shell company in my name when I was a minor. They had used me as a tax shield. Helen had known. She had investigated them years ago. She had watched them use me. And she had quietly protected me, paying my tuition, guiding my career, and eventually leaving me the resources to escape them forever. The guilt evaporated. The lingering sense of familial obligation dissolved into ash. They weren't my family. They were parasites who had been feeding on me since I was 17. I looked at the documents. This wasn't just proof of their character. This was evidence of a long con, and unlike the family agreement Brooke had forged, these documents were real. I wiped my face. I wasn't crying anymore. I reached for my phone and dialed Mateo. I have something new. I said, I have proof of a pattern. What kind of pattern? He asked. Identity theft. I said, going back 15 years. Helen Rourke left me the receipts. I could hear Mateo shifting in his chair. Bring them in tomorrow, he said. This changes the strategy. We are not just defending anymore. We are going on the offense. I hung up and looked at the pile of letters in the recycling bin. Let them write. Let them scream. Let Brooke play the victim. I had the truth now, and tomorrow, I was going to use it to burn their little house of cards to the ground. The morning light in my home office was gray and unforgiving. It fell across the papers spread out on my desk, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. indifferent to the fact that my entire history was being rewritten on the surface below them. I had read Helen's letter the night before, but now I was reading the supporting documents, the legal anatomy of a rescue I hadn't known I needed. The first document was a memorandum dated 10 years ago. It was from Helen to her personal attorney, Mr. Sterling. Subject: Beneficiary Designation Adjustment regarding Ariana Price. I am amending my trust structure to name her the sole beneficiary. This is not a decision made lightly. I have observed the family dynamic closely. She is treated as a resource, not a daughter. If she receives this capital while she is still entangled with them, they will consume it. The trust must be structured to protect her from their proximity. A resource, not a daughter. Seeing it in black and white. Written by the woman I had admired most in the world, broke something inside me that I hadn't realized was still holding on. I had spent 33 years trying to be a good daughter, trying to prove that if I was just responsible enough, quiet enough, and helpful enough, they would finally see me. Helen had seen the truth from the sidelines. There was nothing I could do to earn their love. Because they were not looking for a child. They were looking for an asset. Beneath the memo was a forensic accounting report. Helen had hired a firm to clean up my credit when I was 23. I remembered that year. I had suddenly been approved for an apartment I thought I would be denied for. I had assumed my credit score had naturally rebounded. I was wrong. The report detailed a series of quiet negotiations. Helen's lawyers had contacted the creditors holding the debt from the Ariana Price Consulting shell company my parents had opened. They had paid 50 cents on the dollar to make the debt vanish, on the condition of non-disclosure. Helen had bought my freedom. She had paid thousands of dollars to clear my name, and she had never told me, because she knew the shame would crush me. She had wanted me to start my career with a clean slate, unburdened by the sins of my parents. I sat there, tears drying on my cheeks, feeling a surge of gratitude so powerful it felt like armor. Helen had protected me. Now, it was my turn to protect her legacy. I gathered the documents and drove to Matteo's office. When I laid the papers out on his glass conference table, Matteo went silent. He read the memo. He read the accounting report. He picked up the forgery of the family asset redistribution agreement we had discussed the day before. This changes the narrative, Matteo said, his voice dropping an octave. This is not just a sisterly dispute over a loan. This establishes a decade-long pattern of financial predation. What do? I asked. We stop playing defense, he said. We file the police report for the forgery immediately. We include this history as evidence of motive and pattern, and we send cease and desist letters to every single relative who has contacted you. Will that stop them? No. Matteo said honestly, it will enrage them. Narcissists do not de-escalate when challenged. They explode. But we need them to explode now, while we are watching, so we can document it. We are going for a restraining order. Ariana. To get one that sticks, we need to show immediate, threatening danger. He slid a form across the table. We also need to issue subpoenas. He said, I want the bank records from that consulting account your parents opened years ago, and I want the records from the account Brooke is currently using. We are going to follow the money. I signed the engagement letter. My hand did not shake. The explosion Matteo predicted arrived 48 hours later. The cease and desist letters hit my extended family on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, Brooke had taken her war to the court of public opinion. She didn't name me directly. She was too smart for that, or perhaps advised by someone who knew how to skirt libel laws. Instead, she posted a series of text-based images on Instagram and Facebook. It is funny how money reveals who people really are. You think you know someone, you think you share blood, but the moment they get a little power, they forget where they came from. Then another. Betrayal doesn't come from enemies, it comes from the people you protected. And then, a photo of her and my parents, looking huddled and tragic, with the caption, holding on to the ones who actually care. We might be broke, but we have love. That is something money cannot buy. It was a masterclass in victimhood. She was signaling to everyone we knew, our hometown friends, our distant relatives, the people I went to high school with, that I was the villain. The comments rolled in. Stay strong. Brooke, karma never misses. Some people are just rot inside. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just noise. But then the noise crossed the containment line. I received an email from Sarah, the executive director of the nonprofit board I served on. Subject: urgent discussion. Ariana, can you come in today? We need to talk. My stomach dropped. I left work early and drove to the nonprofit's office. Sarah was waiting for me in the small conference room. She looked tired. Ariana, I love having you on the board, she began, refusing to make eye contact. You have been an incredible asset to the financial literacy program. But? I asked. She turned her laptop around. Under the latest post on the nonprofit's Facebook page, a post about a workshop helping single mothers budget for groceries, there were 5 new comments. Is this the organization run by the woman who sues her own family? Hard to take financial advice from a board member who hoards millions while her sister goes bankrupt. Hypocrites. They are from fake profiles, Sarah said gently. New accounts, no photos. But the donors see them, the community sees them. Ariana, we are about to launch our capital campaign. We cannot have this kind of shadow hanging over us. I looked at the screen. The comments were vicious, targeted, and clearly orchestrated. Brooke, or her friends, were poisoning the one thing I had built that was purely for others. I understand, I said, my voice steady despite the cracking sensation in my chest. You want me to resign? Sarah looked pained. I think a temporary leave of absence would be best, just until this personal matter is resolved. I stood up. I reached into my bag and pulled out my board binder. I will step down effectively immediately. I said, you don't need a leave of absence hanging over you. You need a clean break. Ariana, you don't have to. I do. I said, the mission matters more than my ego. I walked out of the office and sat in my car. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. This was the cost. This was the tax. Helen had warned me that they would eat off my plate, but she hadn't warned me they would smash the china just to hear it break. I lost the board. I lost my safe space. I drove home, feeling a cold, hard resolve settling in my gut. I was done being sad. I was done being embarrassed. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message request on LinkedIn. It was from a name I hadn't seen in 2 years. Tessa Reynolds. Tessa had been Brooke's maid of honor. They had been inseparable since kindergarten. The Terror Twins, my father used to call them, but they had had a falling out shortly after Brooke's wedding. I never knew why. I accepted the request. Ariana, I saw the comments on your nonprofit page. That is a new low, even for her. I hesitated. Then typed back, Hi Tessa. It is what it is. No, Tessa replied. It is a strategy. She did the same thing to me when I asked for the money back that I lent her for the catering deposit. She painted me as the villain to all our friends. I stared at the screen. I have receipts. Ari, Tessa wrote, I have texts from last month. Before she blocked me. I think you need to see them. She sent a series of screenshots. I opened them, my heart pounding. They were a conversation between Tessa and Brooke, dated 3 weeks ago, right after I had told Brooke I wasn't investing in her flip. Brooke. She is being such a bitch. She has millions. Tessa, millions. And she won't give me a dime. Tessa. Maybe she just wants to keep it private. Brooke. Screw privacy. I am going to get her to pay. One way or another. Mom and Dad are already on board. They are so easy to steer. I just have to cry a little and tell Dad that Ari is being mean. And he goes into attack mode. Watch, Tessa. Brooke, that is messed up. Brooke, it is survival. She owes me. She always had the good grades. She always had the easy path. It is my turn. They are so easy to steer. I read the line 3 times. It confirmed everything. My parents weren't just enabling her. They were being weaponized by her. But they were willing weapons. They allowed themselves to be steered because it suited their own narrative that I was the cold, distant daughter and Brooke was the victim who needed them. I saved the screenshots and forwarded them to Mateo. Add this to the file. I typed. Saturday morning arrived with a gray drizzle. I was in my condo, packing a box of things to donate to charity, a purge of the old life, when the buzzer rang. I checked the video monitor. My parents were standing in the lobby. My mother was holding a Tupperware container. Lasagna. Doubtless. My father was holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers. They looked wet, pathetic, and harmless. I pressed the intercom button. I am not letting you up. I said, Ariana. My mother's voice crackled through the speaker. Please, we brought you dinner. We just want to talk. We want to fix this. There is nothing to fix. I said, you need to leave. We are not leaving until you speak to us, my father shouted, leaning into the camera. We are your parents. You cannot treat us like solicitors. I looked at them. If I didn't go down, they would stand there for hours. They would make a scene. They would harass the doorman. I put on my shoes. I did not invite them up. That was the boundary. The condo was mine. The lobby was neutral ground. I took the elevator down. When the doors opened, the air in the lobby felt heavy. My parents were standing near the concierge desk, looking out of place in the sleek, modern space. Ariana, my mother said, stepping forward with the Tupperware. Honey, look at you. You look tired. I am tired, I said, keeping my distance. I am tired of the lies. I am tired of the forgery. It was a misunderstanding, my father interjected. Brooke explained it to us. She didn't mean to use it as a legal document. It was a manifestation tool. She wrote it out to help her visualize the family being supported. She wasn't going to enforce it. I stared at him. A manifestation tool? She showed it to a creditor. Dad, I said, that is not manifestation. That is fraud. She was scared, my mother cried. Why can't you have a little compassion? She is your sister. I looked at the flowers in my father's hand. They were wilting. I am done discussing Brooke. I said, why are you here? We want you to drop the lawyer, my father said, his voice dropping to a plea. This restraining order talk. It is too much. It is killing your mother. We can work this out as a family. We don't need courts. We don't need police. We do need them. I said, because you don't listen to anything else. Ariana, please, my mother said, tears streaming down her face. She reached out to touch my arm. I flinched back. She froze, looking hurt. We just want to protect you, she whispered. You don't know what it is like to have that kind of money. It changes people. It attracts sharks. We just want to make sure the money is safe. I am handling it. I said, Are you? My father asked. With who? That lawyer? How do you know he isn't robbing you blind? You should move the trust. Ari, move it to somewhere local. Somewhere we know people. I almost laughed. Move it to somewhere they could access. It is fine where it is. I said, But is it? My mother asked, wiping her eyes. I heard some things about Meridian Private Wealth. They have high fees. Ariana, you should really look into it. The world stopped. I looked at my mother. The lobby went silent. What did you say? I asked. She blinked, realizing she had slipped. I said you should check the fees. No, I said, taking a step toward her. You said Meridian Private Wealth. She stammered. Well, I just assumed. You didn't assume. I said, my voice shaking with rage. I never told you the name of the institution. I never told anyone. It is a private trust. The only people who know that name are me, my lawyer, and the trustee. My father looked at the floor. My mother looked at the Tupperware in her hands. How do you know? I demanded. My mother looked up, cornered. She tried to deflect. Brooke mentioned it. She must have seen a letter or something when she was... Brooke has never been in my condo. I cut her off. Brooke has never seen my mail. How do you know? My father sighed. He looked suddenly very old. It is a small town. Ariana, he muttered. People talk. No, I said. People don't talk about blind trusts held in Chicago. Someone accessed the file. I backed away from them. The realization was making me dizzy. It wasn't just Brooke hiring a skip tracer. It was deeper. Someone had looked at the actual trust documents. "Go home," I said. "Ariana, wait, go home," I screamed. The concierge looked up, startled. My parents flinched. I turned and walked back to the elevators. I didn't look back. I rode the lift up to my floor, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. They knew the bank. They knew the specific wealth management firm. That meant they hadn't just seen a credit report. They had seen the source. I stormed into my apartment and called Mateo. "They know it is Meridian," I said, breathless. "My mother just slipped up. She named the firm." Mateo swore softly. "That is a breach, a serious one. I will call the bank's security division immediately. But Ariana, I have the results of the subpoena on your parents' old accounts. The ones from the consulting business?" "Yes, tell me," I said, walking to the window and staring out at the rain-slicked city. "We found the deposit from Helen Rourke's legal team." Mateo said, 10 years ago, $5,000. It was labeled Settlement, NDA, so they took the money." I said, "They took the money to clean my credit." "Yes," Mateo said, "but here's the part that matters. They didn't use it to pay the creditors." "What?" "The money was deposited on a Friday," Mateo said, his voice devoid of emotion. "On the following Monday, there was a cash withdrawal of $4,500. The withdrawal slip was signed by Elaine Carter. That is your mother's maiden name, correct?" "Yes," I whispered. "They pocketed the buyout. Ariana, they took the money Helen gave them to fix the debt they created in your name, and they kept it. They let your credit score rot for another 2 years while they spent the rescue money." I closed my eyes. The betrayal was total. It wasn't just negligence. It wasn't just bad with money. It was theft. They had stolen the lifeline Helen had thrown to me. Helen had tried to save me, and they had intercepted the rope. "And the debt?" I asked. "The one on my credit report?" "You paid it," Mateo said. "You paid it off yourself when you were 24. You paid the same debt twice, once with your labor and once with the money they stole from you." I hung up the phone. I stood in the center of my living room. The silence was absolute. I wasn't the easy one. I wasn't the responsible one. I was the mark. I had been the mark for my entire life. I walked to the table where the legal pad lay. I picked up a pen. I wasn't going to just file a police report for forgery. I was going to file for identity theft. I was going to file for fraud. I was going to expose the entire timeline, from the shell company when I was 17 to the stolen settlement when I was 23 to the forged guarantee when I was 33. They wanted to talk about family? Fine, we would talk about it in a deposition. The police station did not look like it did on television. It smelled of stale coffee and floor wax, and the lighting was a buzzing, fluorescent yellow that made everyone look ill. I sat at a metal desk across from a detective who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "I am filing a report for forgery and identity fraud," I said, sliding the folder across the desk. The detective, a man named Miller, opened it. He didn't gasp. He didn't look shocked. He just adjusted his glasses and started reading. This was the reality of justice. It wasn't a gavel banging in a high-ceilinged courtroom. It was paperwork, triplicate forms, and the slow, grinding machinery of bureaucracy. This document. I pointed to the copy of the guarantee Brooke had created. I did not sign this. The signature was lifted from another source, and this loan default. I am listed as a guarantor without my consent. Miller looked up. "Is the suspect known to you?" "Yes," I said, my voice flat. "It is my sister." He nodded, unsurprised. "It is usually family." I signed the affidavit. I watched him stamp the forms. With every thump of the ink pad, I felt a strange cocktail of nausea and relief. I was criminalizing my own blood. I was crossing a line that my parents had told me was sacred, but they had crossed it first. They had crossed it when they stole my identity at 17, and again when they stole Helen's rescue money at 23. The war had moved from the dinner table to the docket. In the days that followed, the pressure cooker of Brooke's life finally exploded. Her former business partner, the one suing her for the wedding deposit fraud, amended his complaint. He alleged that Brooke had falsified bank statements to show solvency, statements that likely used my trust's existence as a shadow asset. Brooke retaliated with the desperation of a trapped animal. She filed a response claiming that I had orally agreed to fund the business and had entrapped her by withdrawing support at the last minute. She dragged my name into the public record, formally accusing me of malicious interference. She was trying to force a settlement. She thought that if she made it ugly enough, if she made it public enough, I would write a check just to make it stop. She was banking on the old Ariana, the one who would set herself on fire to keep the family warm. But that Ariana was gone. I called Mateo. Set up the meeting, I said, all of them, in your office, with a mediator. Are you sure? Mateo asked. We can handle this through letters. You do not have to be in the room. I need to look them in the eye. I said, I need to finish it. The meeting was set for a Thursday afternoon. I arrived 30 minutes early. Mateo's conference room was a fortress of glass and mahogany, overlooking the Chicago skyline. It felt sterile, safe. We had hired a mediator, a retired judge named Harrison, to oversee the proceedings. I sat at the head of the table, my back to the window. I had the documents arranged in front of me, the police report, the forensic accounting of the stolen $5,000, the forged guarantee, and Dr. Rourke's letter. They arrived together. My parents walked in first. My father wore a suit that was 10 years out of date, his face set in a mask of aggrieved dignity. My mother looked frail, playing the part of the suffering matriarch, clutching a tissue. Brooke came in last. She looked like she was dressed for court. A modest navy dress, hair pulled back. She walked with a brittle confidence, her chin high. She didn't look at me. She sat opposite me, opening a leather notebook as if she were prepared to take minutes. She thinks this is a negotiation. I thought, she thinks we are haggling over a price. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. We are here to discuss a resolution to the ongoing legal and financial disputes between Ms. Ariana Price and the Price family. The goal is to avoid further litigation. My father spoke first. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the table. We are just glad Ariana finally agreed to talk, he said, his voice smooth, aimed at the mediator. This whole thing has been a terrible misunderstanding. We are a close family. We have just hit a rough patch. We expect that Ariana will do the right thing and help her sister clear up these clerical errors. Clerical errors, I repeated. Brooke looked up, her eyes cold. You know what he means. Ari, the loan, the misunderstanding with the partner. If you just confirm that you were backing me, the fraud charges go away. The lawsuit goes away. It is just a signature. That is all we need. Just a signature. I said, like the one you forged? I slid the police report across the table. Brooke froze. My parents stared at the document. I filed this 3 days ago. I said, forgery, identity theft. My mother let out a sharp gasp. Ariana, you called the police on your sister? She committed a felony. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady. She created a fake legal document to defraud a lender. She used my name to secure money she couldn't pay back. I was protecting you, Brooke snapped, slamming her hand on the table. I told them you were a silent partner so they wouldn't harass you. I was trying to build something for us. Stop, I said. I pulled the second document from the stack, the bank record from 10 years ago. And this? I asked, looking at my parents. Was this for us too? My father squinted at the paper. What is this? It is the record of the $5,000, Doctor. Rourke sent to your attorney to clear the debt on the credit card you opened in my name. I said, the debt you promised to pay. She sent the money. You took it. My mother went pale. You cashed the check. I continued, pointing to the signature line. Elaine Carter. You took the money meant to fix my credit. And you spent it. And you let me work double shifts for 2 years to pay off a debt you had already been given the money to clear. The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. My father sat back, crossing his arms. He didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed. It was $5,000. Ariana, he scoffed. We were behind on the mortgage. We were going to lose the house, your house, the roof over your head. We used it to keep the family afloat. It's all one pot, isn't it? Family money is family money. It wasn't your money. I said, it was mine. It was a gift to me. And you stole it. We fed you, my mother cried, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. We clothed you. We drove you to school. You act like we are criminals because we borrowed a little money to survive? Do you have any idea how much it costs to raise a child? You are so ungrateful. You sit there with your millions and you count pennies from 10 years ago? I looked at them. They truly believed it. In their minds, I was property. My earnings were their dividends. My credit score was their asset. I looked at Brooke. She was watching me with a mixture of fear and calculation. And you? I said, you hired a skip tracer. You paid someone to hack my financial records. I needed to know, Brooke shouted. I needed to know if you were lying to me. And you were. You were sitting on $15 million while I was drowning. I owe you nothing. I said, you owe me everything, Brooke screamed, standing up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. You think you are so special because you saved money? You are boring. Ari, you have no life. I have a husband. I have a reputation. I have people who look up to me. If I lose this lawsuit, I lose everything. Todd will leave me. I will be bankrupt. Everyone will know. She was shaking. They will see I am a fraud, she whispered, the anger draining out of her, replaced by a terrifying vulnerability. They will see I am nothing. There it was, the core of it. It wasn't about the money. It was about the image. Brooke had spent her life being the special one, the golden child, and she was terrified that without the props, the audience would realize the stage was empty. I looked at the mediator. He was watching us with a grim expression. He had seen this before. Families devouring each other. I took a deep breath. I reached for the final document. The agreement I had drafted with Mateo. I am going to offer you a choice, I said. My parents looked up, hopeful. Brooke wiped her eyes. I am prepared to settle Brooke's immediate debts, I said. My mother let out a sob of relief. Oh, thank God. Thank God. I knew you were good. I knew it. I held up a hand. I will pay the $40,000 to the gambling creditors, I said, and I will pay the settlement to your former business partner to drop the civil suit. I will pay them directly. Not a cent goes into your account. Brooke nodded eagerly. Fine, that is fine. Just make it go away. However, I said, there are conditions. I slid the agreement across the table to her. You will sign this admission of forgery. I said, it states that you falsified the guarantee and that I had no involvement in your business. This document will be held by my attorney if you ever use my name for credit again, or if you contact me, or if you post about me publicly. We will file it with the police and reinstitute the charges. Brooke stared at the paper. And, I continued, looking at my parents, you will sign a non-contact agreement, all of you. You will not call me. You will not email me. You will not show up at my building. You will not contact my employer. You will not contact my friends. My father's face turned red. You are divorcing us? You are paying us off to go away? I am buying my peace. I said, this is cruel. My mother wept. We are your parents. You can't just cut us off. We love you. You don't love me, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. You love what I can do for you. You stole from me. You lied to me. You let me think I was crazy for wanting boundaries. I looked at Brooke. The offer is on the table. I said, I pay the debts directly. You avoid jail. You avoid bankruptcy. But you lose me. Forever. Or, you refuse, and I walk out of here. And the police investigation proceeds, and I will testify against you. Brooke looked at the paper. She looked at her parents. Martin, do something, my mother pleaded. She can't do this. She is doing it, Brooke whispered. She looked at me. Her eyes were hard, glassy. If I sign this, she said, you pay it all? Today? Within 24 hours, I said, And Todd? Brooke asked. Will you pay Todd's debt so he stays? I will pay the gambling debt. I said, whether he stays is up to him. Brooke picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking. Don't sign it. Brooke, my father commanded. He stood up, puffing out his chest. We don't take ultimatums from our children. Ariana, you will write a check to your sister because it is the right thing to do. You will not force her to sign a confession. That is blackmail. It is justice. Mateo spoke up from the corner, and it is a very generous offer. Mr. Price, Ariana, look at me, my father said, ignoring the lawyer. He pointed a finger at me. If you make her sign that, you are destroying this family. You are choosing money over blood. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike and the man who had stolen my tuition money. I didn't choose money, I said softly. You did. You chose it every single time. I looked at Brooke. Choose, I said. Brooke looked at her father, then at the paper. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that he couldn't save her. His bluster had no currency here. She put the pen to the paper. I am sorry, Daddy, she whispered. I can't go to jail. She signed. She pushed the paper back to me. She didn't look up. It is done, I said. I signed the check authorization Mateo had prepared. Direct wire transfers to the creditors. I handed the folder to the mediator. I stood up. My legs felt light, like I was walking on the moon. Ariana, my mother said, her voice small and broken. What about holidays? What about Christmas? I looked at her. I felt a pang of sorrow, sharp and deep, for the mother I wanted her to be, but not for the woman she was. I will be spending them with people who don't need to be paid to be in my life, I said. I turned to the door. Ariana, my father shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. You will regret this. You will be alone. You will have all that money and no one to share it with. I paused with my hand on the handle. I looked back at them one last time. They sat around the mahogany table, a tableau of need and resentment. They were a sinking ship, and for the first time in my life. I wasn't bailing water. I was on the shore. I would rather be alone, I said, than be consumed. I walked out. I walked through the glass doors of the law firm. I took the elevator down 40 floors. My ears popped. When I stepped out onto the street, it was raining. A cold, Chicago drizzle that smelled of wet pavement and ozone. I stood there for a moment, letting it hit my face. I pulled out my phone. I went to my contacts. Mom, block. Dad, block. Brooke, block. I scrolled through the extended family. The aunts, the cousins, the flying monkeys. Block, block, block. The list grew shorter. The noise grew quieter. I put the phone in my pocket. I had $15 million. I had a quiet condo. I had a future that was entirely, terrifyingly blank. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. I hailed a cab. Where to? The driver asked. I thought about it. I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have to go to a family dinner. I didn't have to save anyone. Just drive, I said. Take the scenic route. He pulled into traffic, merging into the stream of taillights. I watched the city blur past, a smear of red and gold. I wasn't happy. Not yet. Happiness would take time. But as the distance between me and that conference room grew, I felt something else settling in my chest. It was peace, and it was priceless. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey through the dark corners of family obligation and the high price of setting boundaries. I would love to hear your thoughts on Ariana's final decision. Did she do the right thing? Or was the ultimatum too harsh? Please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I love seeing our community grow across the world. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, drama, and the complex human heart. Share your thoughts in English below. Until next time.